It started as an ordinary evening, the kind where the hum of daily life blended into a quiet lull. I had just settled on the couch, my laptop open, balancing a cup of coffee in one hand while scrolling through emails with the other. My shoulders ached from another long workday, but at least I was home, in what I thought was my safe space. The notifications on my phone buzzed occasionally. Work messages, a couple of bank alerts, nothing unusual. But then, a message popped up that made my stomach tighten. "Dad, you need to see this." It was from my daughter, Claire. Something about the tone unsettled me. Claire wasn't the type to be dramatic over text. If she was sending me something with urgency, it meant something serious. My fingers hesitated over the screen before tapping on the attachment. A video? I pressed play. At first, the screen was dark and shaky, the muffled sound of voices filling the silence. Someone had filmed this secretly. Then, the image steadied, and my blood ran cold. There they were, my wife, Michelle, her brother Adrian, and her parents, Gregory and Diane, seated around my kitchen table. My home, the place I had built for my family. The same people who had smiled at me over dinner just last week, who had hugged me and thanked me for everything I did. "He's nothing but a worthless burden," Michelle scoffed, swirling a glass of red wine in her hand as if she were discussing a stranger, not her husband. "He thinks he's doing us a favor?" Adrian laughed. "After everything we've done for him, he owes us." "Paying the mortgage is the least he can do," Gregory grunted. The words slammed into me, knocking the breath from my lungs. I paused the video, my hands gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Did I hear that right? I pressed play again. There was no mistake. A worthless burden. He owes us. The least he can do. I replayed it once, then again, and again. Each time, the betrayal cut deeper, the words sinking like blades into my skin. I had spent 4 years covering their mortgage, funneling the payments through Titan Investments, my LLC, ensuring they never missed a deadline. They thought they were paying a bank, blissfully unaware that I was the one keeping their house from foreclosure. My money, my sacrifice. And this was what they thought of me? I had done it because I wanted to help, because I believed in family, because Michelle had cried to me years ago, telling me her parents would lose everything if they didn't get financial assistance. I had quietly arranged it all, without a second thought, believing it was the right thing to do. And yet, here they were, gathered around a table, mocking me. Not grateful, not even indifferent, spiteful, disgusted, as if I were some fool who existed only to serve them. I set my phone down, inhaling sharply through my nose. 1,000 thoughts collided in my mind, but one stood out above the rest. I was done. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to confront Michelle with some dramatic fight scene. No, that would be too easy. I would do something better. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Claire. "Thank you. Don't tell anyone you sent this, but things are about to change." Then, for the first time in years, I smiled. I sat in my home office, staring at the glowing numbers on my laptop screen. The room was dim, lit only by the soft hum of my desk lamp. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, hesitating for just a moment before I clicked on the financial records I had buried under layers of spreadsheets and business transactions. $285,400. That was how much I had paid toward their mortgage over the last 4 years. Nearly $300,000, quietly funneled through Titan Investments, my LLC, disguised as monthly bank payments so that Michelle's family wouldn't feel like they were living on my charity. $61,200. That was how much they had contributed. A mere 20%. I let out a slow, controlled breath, rubbing my temples as the weight of the numbers settled over me. For 4 years, I had been carrying 80% of their home's cost, sacrificing vacations, hobbies, and even simple luxuries for my wife's family, all while they sat in my home, drinking my wine, calling me a worthless burden. My jaw clenched, the memory of that video searing through my mind like a fresh wound. They hadn't just used me. They had laughed about it. I glanced at the framed wedding photo on my desk. Michelle in her ivory gown, her hand in mine, both of us smiling at a future I had once believed in. I turned the frame face down. The last piece of my delusion crumbled as I reached for my phone and scrolled to a familiar number. Marcus. He was more than just my financial advisor. He was also my lawyer and someone I trusted to handle things cleanly. I pressed dial, leaning back in my chair as the call connected. "Steve, what's up?" "I need to talk about the purchase clause in the mortgage agreement," I said, my voice cool, controlled. There was a pause, then a knowing chuckle. "Something tells me this isn't just about a casual financial review." "You'd be right." Marcus clicked his tongue thoughtfully. "All right. From what I remember, Titan Investments holds the mortgage, meaning if they ever default on a payment, I take full ownership," I finished for him. "Exactly. The house becomes yours. They become month-to-month tenants." I exhaled slowly, feeling the pieces fall into place. "When's their next payment due?" 2 weeks from today." 2 weeks. For the first time in 4 years, I wouldn't be paying it. And if the payment doesn't go through? Then Titan Investments will issue a default notice. They'll have 30 days before eviction proceedings start. I tapped my fingers against my desk, processing the gravity of my next move. I had spent years building their safety net. Now, I was about to pull it away. "Proceed as planned," I said, my voice firm. "Understood," Marcus replied. "I'll start the paperwork." I hung up and set my phone down, staring at the dark screen. 2 weeks. That was all it would take. The very people who had mocked me, who had called me a burden, were about to learn what it really meant to owe someone everything. And this time, there would be no mercy. The invitation came just a few days later. Michelle walked into the living room with a bright, expectant smile, as if she hadn't just been caught conspiring against me days ago. She leaned against the couch, casually adjusting the hem of her sweater, her tone light. "Honey, we should have dinner at my parents' house on Sunday. They want to talk to us about something important." I already knew what this was about. The mortgage. The money. The next phase of their manipulation. I could almost hear Gregory's exaggerated sigh, see Adrian's smug grin, feel Diane's fake warmth as she tried to convince me, once again, that I was part of the family while they slowly drained me dry. Michelle had no idea I had already decided to let their world collapse. I forced a neutral smile. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice easy. "Sunday sounds perfect." She beamed, mistaking my compliance for submission. They thought I was still their fool. But in just 8 days, they would learn otherwise. Sunday arrived. The house, their house, which I owned, looked the same as always when we pulled into the driveway. But everything felt different now. Before, I had seen this place as a symbol of generosity, a sacrifice for family. Now, it was a monument to my stupidity. Diane was at the door before we even knocked, her smile warm and welcoming. Fake. I could see it now. All of it had always been fake. "Steve, sweetheart," she gushed, pulling me into a hug like I was her favorite son-in-law. Her perfume was overwhelming, and I had to stop myself from recoiling. Michelle walked in beside me, her fingers looping around mine as we moved into the dining room. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. Did she know? Did she know I had seen the video? Did she know that in exactly 1 week, their mortgage would default and I'd be kicking them out of their own home? I doubted it. If she did, she wouldn't be sitting beside me, resting her hand on my knee as if we were the perfect couple. Adrian and Gregory were already seated at the table, both exchanging a silent look before turning toward me. I knew that look. They were about to ask for money. Again. We went through the small talk first, the usual shallow pleasantries about work, the weather, Claire's recent college projects, but I could feel it coming, the way their smiles stretched just a little too tight, the way Gregory's hand drummed against the table, the way Michelle shifted beside me, nudging me just slightly, like a gentle push toward their trap. Then, finally, Michelle cleared her throat and looked at me with those eyes, the ones that used to convince me to do anything. "Babe, we wanted to talk about the mortgage," she said sweetly, like she was asking for something small. I remained silent. Let them talk. Gregory exhaled deeply, shaking his head, playing the part of a man burdened by life's unfairness. "We're struggling a little," he admitted, his voice weary. "The payments are it's getting harder to keep up." It took everything in me not to laugh. He was telling me about financial struggles? Me? The only reason he still had a roof over his head was because of me. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch. Adrian, ever the opportunist, leaned forward. We were thinking, if you could just help out a little more. Maybe contribute an extra $2,500 a month? There it was. More. After everything I had already given, after 4 years of supporting them in secret, they still wanted more. I let my gaze drift over them, Gregory, rubbing his temple like he was exhausted from the burden of my money. Diane, watching me expectantly, like she was sure I'd agree. Adrian, practically smirking, already counting the extra cash in his mind. And Michelle, my wife, the woman I had loved, had trusted, sitting beside me with zero guilt, fully expecting me to give in just like always. I set my glass down. I'll think about it, I said smoothly. Michelle beamed as if she had already won. They all thought I was agreeing. They had no idea that in exactly 8 days, their world would collapse. I glanced at my watch, suppressing a smile. 8 days. The exact time before their mortgage defaulted. I had no intention of staying late that night. The moment we finished dinner, I was ready to leave. Every second spent in that house, my house, felt suffocating. The fake smiles, the forced laughter, the quiet expectation that I would hand over more money like a loyal servant. But then I excused myself to use the bathroom, and as I walked past Gregory's study, I heard my name. I froze. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar, and from inside, voices murmured in low, conspiratorial tones. Steve's been hiding money in some LLC called Titan Investments, Gregory said. My pulse kicked up a notch. They knew. Adrian snorted. And you're just figuring that out? I took a careful step closer, straining to listen. He's sitting on way more than he lets on, Adrian continued. He's been paying more into the mortgage than what he claims. But the idiot set it up under a business name. We can use that. My grip tightened into a fist. If he doesn't help voluntarily, Michelle's voice joined in smoothly, we can remind him about that time he borrowed from our savings to pay his mother's medical bills. He thought we never knew. Cold rage swept through me. That money had saved my mother's life. When she had fallen sick, I had done everything possible to get her treatment. I had pulled money from savings, maxed out credit cards, and drained accounts. I never asked Michelle's family for a single dime. I had only borrowed temporarily from our shared savings, intending to replace it, which I had, every penny of it. And yet, here they were, using it as blackmail. Adrian laughed. And if that doesn't work, we can spread some concerns about his mental stability at work. Maybe hint that he's been misusing company funds. I stopped breathing. This wasn't just manipulation. This was a threat. A serious one. They were planning to ruin me. For a long, agonizing moment, I stayed there, unmoving, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, I smiled. They thought they had leverage over me. They had no idea how wrong they were. I turned away, my mind already working through every possible move I could make. By the time I returned to the dining room, Michelle was all smiles again, as if she hadn't just plotted to destroy me moments ago. Have you thought about the mortgage, babe? She asked, reaching for my hand across the table. I squeezed hers gently, meeting her gaze with calm amusement. Yes, I said, my voice steady. You'll have my answer in 8 days. Adrian smirked. Gregory leaned back like he had already won, and Diane's face lit up with relief. They thought I was saying yes. They thought they had me cornered. What they didn't know was that their house, the very place they sat, smug and entitled, was already mine. And in just over a week, they would have nothing left. The week passed too slowly for my liking. Every interaction with Michelle felt like playing chess against an opponent who had no idea she was already checkmated. She was too sweet, too accommodating, too eager to please, as if buttering me up in the days leading to their financial demise would somehow change my mind. Honey, do you want your favorite dinner tonight? You've been working so hard. Let me take care of you. It would have been convincing if I didn't know the truth, but I let her continue, nodding at the right moments, smiling as if I were none the wiser. She thought I was still their fool, and that was fine, because in just 2 days, their entire world would crumble. The morning of the deadline, I sat in my office, my laptop open to Titan Investments account. I checked the time, 8:59 a.m. The mortgage payment was due at 9 a.m. sharp. Michelle and her family had no clue that this was the first time in 4 years that I wouldn't be paying it for them. I leaned back in my chair, watching the seconds tick down. 9 a.m. The screen refreshed. Payment failed. A slow, satisfied breath escaped my lips. It had begun. I reached for my phone and dialed Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "It's done," I said simply. He didn't need clarification. "I'll send out the default notice immediately," Marcus replied. "They have 30 days. After that, eviction proceedings begin." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. 30 days. That was all the time they had left before I took away everything they had mocked me over. I ended the call and leaned back, staring at my phone, waiting for the inevitable fallout. It didn't take long. 9:12 a.m. Michelle's name flashed across the screen. I took my time answering. "Hey, babe," I said casually. Her voice was frantic. "Something's wrong with the mortgage. I just checked the account. The payment bounced. I don't understand what's happening." I smiled. There it was. The first crack in her perfect little world. "That's odd," I said, feigning confusion. "Did you check with the lender?" "Yes. And they said something about the mortgage being tied to an LLC, Titan Investments? I thought we were paying a bank, Steve. What the hell is Titan Investments?" Now she was asking the real questions. I let the silence drag out, letting her panic build before I spoke again. "Titan Investments isn't a bank," I said smoothly. "It's an LLC. My LLC." Dead silence. I could almost hear the gears in her head grinding to a halt as she tried to process the words. "What?" she whispered, her voice hollow. "I've been paying your family's mortgage for the last 4 years," I said, keeping my tone even, controlled. "Every single payment, every dollar that kept your parents in that house? That was me." Her breath hitched. "You're lying." "Check your email," I replied. "I sent you the legal notice." I could hear the faint sound of her typing, the heavy silence stretching between us. Then, a gasp. She saw it. The default notice. The official paperwork from Titan Investments stating that their mortgage was now in default, and that unless they came up with the full amount owed, ownership would revert completely to the LLC. To me, her husband, the same man she had called a worthless burden, the same man her family had plotted against, the man they had laughed at, thinking he owed them. Now, they owed me. Everything. Her voice came back, shaking. "Steve, tell me this is some kind of joke?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling with a satisfied sigh. "No joke, babe," I said. "You have 30 days. And then, before she could say another word, I hung up. The fallout was immediate. The moment I hung up on Michelle, my phone started ringing again. Over and over, her name flashing across the screen in frantic desperation. I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, listening to the silence of my home, letting the weight of what I had done settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the fool. I let her calls go to voicemail. Less than an hour later, I got my next expected call. Gregory. I stared at his name for a moment before answering. "Steve," he barked, his usual arrogance tinged with an edge of panic. "What the hell is this notice we got from Titan Investments?" I leaned back, taking my time to respond. "It's exactly what it says." "What do you mean?" "This is our house. We've been making payments." "No," I corrected, my voice calm, measured. "I've been making the payments. And now, I'm done." Silence. For a moment, I thought he had hung up, but then his voice returned, lower, colder. "You can't do this, Steve." I let out a breath, amused. I already did. The sudden shift in his tone wasn't unexpected. Gregory had always been a manipulator, the kind of man who played the benevolent father figure when it suited him, but turned into something uglier when he lost control. "You ungrateful bastard," he snarled. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I almost laughed. Everything they'd done for me? I had bought their house from foreclosure. I had kept them afloat for years, and they had mocked me for it. "You have 30 days, Gregory," I said, completely unfazed by his fury. "Make the payment, or the house is mine." "You son of a—" I hung up before he could finish. The panic sets in. The next few days were pure entertainment. Michelle didn't come home that night. Instead, she stayed at her parents' house, trying to calm the storm. I could only imagine what was happening behind those doors. Gregory barking orders, Diane on the verge of tears, Adrian trying to find an angle to weasel his way out of this mess. I didn't care. By the third day, I finally received the expected text from Michelle. Michelle, we need to talk. I ignored it. A second text followed. Michelle, Steve, please. We can fix this. There was nothing to fix. Gregory tries to fight back. On day 4, Gregory's desperation turned into aggression. I walked into my office that morning, my coffee steaming in my hand, only to find a new email sitting in my inbox, one with a very familiar sender. Gregory. The subject line was blunt. Reverse the notice immediately. I clicked it open. Steve, you have made a huge mistake. If you think you can just take our home, you are gravely mistaken. I have already contacted a lawyer, and we will be fighting this with everything we have. If you want to avoid a legal battle, I suggest we have a conversation immediately. Gregory. I chuckled. He had no case. I forwarded the email to Marcus, my lawyer, with a simple message. Prepare for the empty threats. Let's proceed. Within 2 hours, Marcus replied. He has no legal standing. The mortgage terms are airtight. Let them scream all they want. That was all I needed. Gregory could threaten, but it didn't matter. Adrian tries to ruin me. As expected, Adrian took a different approach. By day 6, I got a call from an old friend at work. Hey man, he said hesitantly. You should know someone's been making calls about you, asking about your financials. I smirked. Of course. Let me guess, I said, already knowing the answer. Adrian? There was a pause before my friend sighed. Yeah, he was fishing for dirt. Something about you misusing company funds? I laughed. I had been expecting this. Adrian had always tried to act smarter than he was. What he didn't realize was that I had already warned HR weeks ago. The moment I found out about their plan to sabotage me, I had made sure the truth was well documented. I wasn't the fool they thought I was. Let him keep trying, I said. He's just wasting his time. Reality hits. By the end of the week, the reality had sunk in. Their legal threats were useless. Adrian's attempts to sabotage me had failed. They had no money to cover the mortgage payment. For the first time, they understood what it meant to be powerless. And I was enjoying every second of it. I finally responded to Michelle's desperate texts with just one message. You have 24 days left. Make it count. The moment I hit send, I smiled to myself. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. The fallout was beautiful to watch. I had expected rage. I had anticipated desperation. But I hadn't expected just how low they would sink in their attempts to claw their way out of their mess. And of course, Adrian was the first to take a swing. The smear campaign begins. By the time I arrived at work on Monday morning, my assistant Julia was already waiting at my office door, her face tight with concern. Hey, there's something weird going on, she said as I walked in. I set down my coffee. Weird how? She hesitated. I overheard some guys in the break room talking. Someone's been making calls, asking about you, trying to stir up rumors. It sounded serious. I wasn't surprised. I knew exactly who was behind it. Adrian. He had tried blackmail, and when that didn't work, he had gone for character assassination. Predictable. Pathetic. I opened my laptop and pulled up my email, already expecting the worst. Sure enough, there was a message waiting from HR, flagged as urgent. Steve, we've received some anonymous concerns regarding financial misconduct on your part. This includes alleged misuse of company funds and ethical violations. While we do not act on baseless claims, we would appreciate a meeting to clarify these matters. Let us know your availability. Regards. HR. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. They really thought they could ruin me. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. This about the Adrian problem? You already heard? Oh yeah, he chuckled. Your boy's been working overtime, calling anyone who'll listen. Too bad for him. No one's buying it. I smirked. Good. But let's make sure he doesn't get any further. Already on it. I ended the call, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. This was going to backfire spectacularly. The HR meeting. By the time I walked into HR that afternoon, I was fully prepared. Sarah, the head of HR, greeted me with a polite but cautious smile. "Steve, I'm sure you're aware of why we called this meeting." I nodded. "I am. Let's get right to it." She opened a file, scanning the complaints. "It seems someone has accused you of mishandling company funds." I feigned mild confusion. "That's interesting. Do they have any actual proof, or is this just hearsay?" Sarah's lips twitched. "It's vague. No evidence has been presented. It's mostly speculation." Exactly as I thought. I folded my hands over my knee. "You know I've been working here for nearly a decade, right? Have I ever given you reason to believe I'd do something unethical?" She sighed. "No, you haven't. Which is why this all seems suspicious." I leaned forward slightly. "Then let's make this easy. I give you full permission to audit anything you need. My accounts, my transactions. Hell, I'll even let you call my bank." Sarah blinked, clearly surprised. "That won't be necessary. I trust you." I smiled. "Good. Now, would you like to know who started this little rumor?" She hesitated before nodding. I pulled out my phone, opened my call log, and slid it across the table. Multiple calls from one person, Adrian. Sarah's expression darkened. "Your wife's brother? That's the one. He's got a personal grudge, and this is his sad little attempt to settle it." She sighed, rubbing her temple. "I hate office drama." I laughed. "Tell me about it." She tapped her pen against the desk before giving me a decisive nod. "Consider this handled, Steve. We won't entertain baseless accusations any further." I stood, shaking her hand. "Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it." As I left the office, I sent a quick text to Marcus. They dropped it. Adrian lost. Marcus, of course he did. Now, let's watch him spiral. And spiral he did. Adrian's downfall. By the time I got home that night, Adrian had already realized his plan had failed. My phone rang just as I stepped inside. I checked the caller ID. "Adrian." I smirked and answered. "Adrian, to what do I owe this pleasure?" His voice was livid. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" I chuckled. "No, I don't think. I know. You ruined my life. You smug bastard," he spat. "HR called my office. They want to review my transactions because of you." I leaned against the counter, enjoying this far too much. "Oh, that? Yeah. I may have mentioned a few things about your shady business dealings." He went silent, because he knew exactly what I meant. Adrian wasn't just a liar. He was a fraudster. And the second HR got a whiff of his questionable financial history, they had launched a full investigation into him. He had tried to ruin me, but all he had done was expose himself. "You son of a..." I hung up before he could finish. The final blow. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Adrian was finished. Gregory's legal threats had failed. Michelle? She hadn't come home in 2 days, probably drowning in her family's mess. I checked my phone one last time before bed. A single text from Michelle. "Michelle, we need to talk. Please." I took a sip of my drink and typed a reply. "We will. But not in the way you think." Then I set the phone down, knowing exactly what came next. The eviction notice. The morning of the 30-day deadline was crisp and clear, the kind of day that should have felt normal. But for Michelle's family, it would be anything but. I sat at my kitchen table, in my home, sipping a steaming cup of coffee, knowing that at that very moment, Gregory, Diane, Adrian, and Michelle were waking up to reality. Today, they were no longer homeowners. Their delusion had officially expired. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. There it was, the official notice from Titan Investments, confirming that their grace period had ended. I clicked forward and sent it directly to Gregory, Michelle, and Adrian, adding just a simple message beneath it. "Consider this your final notice. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Then, I sat back and waited. It didn't take long. 7:42 a.m., Michelle called. I ignored it. 7:44 a.m., Adrian called. Ignored. 7:46 a.m., Gregory called. Ignored. By 7:50 a.m., my phone was blowing up with texts. Michelle, what is this? You're really doing this? Adrian, you think you won? You have no idea what you're starting. Gregory, you entitled little brat. You think you can take what's mine? I read each message with a smirk. Sipping my coffee like this was just another peaceful morning. And then, at 8:02 a.m., there was a loud, furious banging at my front door. They came in person. Perfect. The showdown. I took my time walking to the door, opening it to reveal exactly what I expected. Gregory's face was red with rage. Adrian looked on the verge of losing control, and Michelle stood between them, her eyes wide with desperation. Diane wasn't there. Smart woman. She probably stayed behind, already resigning herself to their fate. Steve, Michelle started, stepping forward. We need to talk. Please. I crossed my arms. Talk? I gave you 30 days to talk. You ignored every warning. Gregory let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. You ungrateful little bastard. We took you in. We made you family. And this is how you repay us? I tilted my head, feigning confusion. You made me family? Or you made me your personal bank? His mouth snapped shut. You were living in a house that I was paying for, I continued. And yet, behind my back, you mocked me. You called me a burden, a fool, all while sitting under a roof that my money kept over your heads. Michelle flinched, but Gregory wasn't done. You think you can just take our home from us? He spat. We've been making those payments for years. I let out a sharp laugh. Have you, though? Because according to the records, I've covered 80% of those payments. And now, I own it. Legally. Gregory's fists clenched, and for a second, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. But then Adrian stepped in, his usual smug arrogance replaced with something far more dangerous. You better be careful, Steve, he said smoothly. People don't just get away with things like this. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough to make sure they understood exactly how over this game was. I didn't get away with anything, Adrian. I played fair. You didn't. And now you're losing. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. You have 29 days left, I added, turning to Gregory. Pack your things. I stepped back inside and shut the door in their faces. For the first time in years, I felt free. Michelle's plea. That night, I wasn't surprised when Michelle finally came home. She walked into the house quietly, no dramatics, no slamming doors, just the soft sound of her heels clicking against the floor as she stepped into the living room. I glanced up from my laptop, watching as she hesitated before speaking. Steve, she said carefully, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. Can we just talk? I gestured for her to sit. Go ahead. She bit her lip, exhaling shakily. You don't have to do this. I arched a brow. Do what, exactly? Her eyes searched mine, desperate. This whole revenge thing. I know you're hurt. I know what you heard. You mean the video? I cut in. The one where you and your family insulted me in my own home? That one. She winced. It wasn't like that. I gave her a pointed look. Michelle. She sighed, dropping her gaze to her lap. Okay, it was bad. I won't make excuses. But you have to understand, it was just talk. We didn't mean it. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You didn't mean it? So when you called me a worthless burden, that was just casual conversation? She swallowed hard. I was angry. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. Then I said the words that finally made her break. You were angry, so you called me worthless. I was angry, so I took your house. Her breath hitched. Steve. I held up a hand. No, Michelle. I spent years sacrificing for your family. I gave you everything, and it was never enough. And now, you're finally going to understand what it feels like to have the rug pulled out from under you. Tears welled in her eyes. So that's it, she whispered. You're just throwing away our marriage? I looked at her for a long moment before answering. No, Michelle. You threw it away the moment you betrayed me. Silence. Then, with a slow nod, she stood up, wiped her tears, and walked upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the closet door open, the rustle of clothes being pulled from hangers. She was packing. Good. Because in 29 days, she wouldn't have a home to return to. And that, finally, would be justice. The next morning, the house felt different. It wasn't just the tension. It was the understanding that everything had changed. That every conversation, every fake smile, every whispered scheme had led to this moment. Michelle had barely spoken since last night. She came downstairs, suitcase in hand. Her eyes red from what I assumed were tears she now realized were useless. I was in the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of coffee when she hesitated by the doorway. "I'll be staying with my parents," she said quietly. I took a slow sip before responding. "Good choice." Her lips pressed into a thin line. I could tell she wanted me to say more, to give her some kind of olive branch, to change my mind, to offer her a way out of the mess she helped create. I wasn't going to. She had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. The house feels different now. After she left, I walked through the house. The house that had once been ours, that had once been full of memories. Now it was just mine. For years, I had convinced myself that I was doing the right thing by supporting Michelle's family, that paying their mortgage, covering their expenses, and sacrificing my own financial stability was just what a good husband did. But now I saw it for what it really was. A scam. I had been nothing more than a walking paycheck to them, someone they could mock behind my back while I kept them from drowning in their own irresponsibility. Not anymore. I had finally cut them off, and it felt damn good. The aftermath begins. By the end of the week, the news had spread. I didn't have to go looking for updates. They came to me. Michelle was still in denial, but Gregory and Adrian were in full-blown panic mode. My phone buzzed with a text from a mutual acquaintance. "Tom, bro, I ran into Adrian today. He's losing it. Says you're ruining his whole life." I smirked, typing back. "Me? Did he say how?" "Tom. Something about their credit tanking and how they're completely broke without your help. He was ranting about lawsuits, but let's be real, the guy has no case." I let out a chuckle. Of course they were broke. I had propped them up for so long. They had never bothered to actually take care of themselves. Now, without me, they were exactly what they accused me of being, burdens. Adrian's last pathetic attempt. On Friday night, I got a surprise visitor. The doorbell rang at nearly midnight, and when I checked the security camera, I wasn't surprised to see Adrian standing there, looking like a man on the edge. For a second, I considered ignoring him, but then I decided, why not have a little fun? I opened the door, leaning against the frame. Adrian. His jaw was tight, his eyes wild with frustration. "You think this is over?" I took a slow breath, pretending to consider his words. "No, I think it's just beginning." His hands fisted at his sides. "You don't have to do this." "Do what, Adrian?" I asked, tilting my head. "Hold you accountable? Let you feel the consequences of your own actions?" "Funny, I don't remember you having this energy when you were calling me a worthless burden." His nostrils flared. "We were joking." "No, you weren't." Silence. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. "You should leave," I said, "before you embarrass yourself any further." He stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, before finally muttering, "This isn't over." Then he turned and walked off into the night. And just like that, I knew. I had one. The reality of their new life. 3 weeks later, they moved out. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't need to. But I heard from Claire, our daughter, who had driven by out of curiosity. "Dad," she said, laughing over the phone, "you should see it. They look miserable." I leaned back in my chair, grinning. "Where are they moving?" "Some tiny rental across town. You'd think they were moving into a shack with the way they were acting." I nodded, satisfied. They had no idea how lucky they were. I could have let them lose everything, but I hadn't. I had just taken back what was rightfully mine. And now, they were finally forced to live within their means. Michelle's last goodbye. The night before they left, I got one final message from Michelle. It was a voicemail. I almost didn't listen to it, but curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Her voice was shaky, exhausted, and, finally, defeated. "Steve, I don't know what to say. I guess I just never thought you'd actually go through with this. I thought I thought you still loved me. There was a long pause, a deep sigh. I don't know what happens now. I guess we're just done. I stared at my phone for a long moment after the message ended. Then, I hit delete. Yes, Michelle, we're done. For the first time in years, I was finally free. The day they moved out, I didn't celebrate. Not outwardly, at least. I didn't throw a party. I didn't gloat. I didn't stand outside their house, the house that was now mine, and watch them load up their overstuffed boxes into borrowed trucks. I didn't need to, because the victory wasn't about watching them suffer. It was about knowing that, for the first time in years, I had chosen myself. A fresh start. The silence in my house was refreshing. No more manipulative dinner invitations. No more phone calls about money. No more expectations that I would be the one to fix their problems. Just peace. I sat in my living room that night, looking around at the space that had once been theirs, too. Now, it was mine alone. And for the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had given up just to keep the people who never valued me. Not anymore. I picked up my phone and made the final decision that would close this chapter for good. I dialed Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. Tell me this is the call I think it is. I smirked. Put the house on the market. Selling the past. I could have kept it. I could have kept their house, rented it out, turned it into another financial asset under Titan Investments. But I didn't want it. I didn't want their ghosts haunting the walls. So I put it up for sale. And within 2 months, the offers started rolling in. Marcus sent me an email. Final offer, $985,000. Do you want to accept? I sat back, letting that number sink in. I had spent 4 years paying their mortgage, funneling nearly $300,000 into it, only to be repaid with betrayal, insults, and threats. Now, I was about to make nearly $1 million off the house they thought they owned. Poetic justice. I typed back one word. Accept. The final closure. The sale closed 2 weeks later. Michelle's family had no idea. As far as they knew, the house was still sitting empty, waiting for its next tenant. They thought they still had time to somehow win it back, but they didn't, because it was already gone. And so were they. Michelle's final plea. One evening, long after the house had been sold, I received a text from Michelle. Michelle, can we meet? Just once? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Me? What's the point? She responded almost instantly. Michelle, I just need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I wanted her back. Not because I needed closure. But because I wanted to see what excuse she had left. The coffee shop meeting. She chose a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. I arrived early, taking a seat by the window. When she walked in, she looked different. Not the confident, entitled woman who had once laughed about how I was nothing more than a burden. She looked tired, defeated. She slid into the chair across from me, folding her hands together, her engagement ring noticeably absent. I let the silence stretch between us. She was the one who wanted this meeting. She could be the one to start. Finally, she sighed. I don't even know what to say to you. I took a sip of my coffee. Then why are we here? Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, searching for something. Maybe the man who used to bend over backward for her. That man was gone. I miss you, Steve, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't react. I let the words settle, waiting for the catch. Because there was always a catch. Sure enough, she hesitated before adding, I don't understand how you could do this to me. To us. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Do this to you? I repeated. Michelle, I did nothing to you. You did this to yourself. Her jaw tightened. I was angry, okay? I said things I didn't mean. I nodded. And I made choices I absolutely meant. She inhaled sharply, looking down at her hands. So that's it? She asked finally. We're really over? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. We were over the moment I heard that video. Her face crumbled for just a second, just long enough for me to see regret, maybe even real guilt. But it didn't matter anymore. I stood up, tossing some cash onto the table for my coffee. Goodbye, Michelle. Then I walked away. I didn't turn back. I didn't hesitate. Because for the first time in years, I was completely free. A new beginning. Selling the house wasn't just about the money. It was about starting fresh. With the sale, I took a portion of the profits and did something unexpected. I set up a foundation for victims of financial abuse, people who, like me, had been manipulated and drained by those they trusted the most. I named it the Phoenix Fund, because that's exactly what I was. A phoenix, burned, but reborn, rising from the ashes of what they thought was my destruction. Now, I was stronger than ever, and as I sat on the beach during my first vacation in years, watching the sun dip below the waves, I let out a deep, satisfied breath. I had no regrets, no bitterness, just peace. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.